Thank you.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Minister Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I think it's appropriate that I stand up and take a call on the budget, considering that it is within Vote Social Development that I'm responsible for more than a third of all government spending. The Vote Social Development is spending a total of $22.23 billion on social support and services for New Zealand over the 13-14 year. This broadly maintains the same funding from the previous year, although is an increase of about 3%. There's been some key movements within, and we're certainly seeing an increase in super as we see people continue to the increase of keeping it at 66% and the need for those that are older. Just to run through some of those bigger numbers so that people have got them on. So we're spending about $8 billion a year on benefits, so on welfare for working age population. It's broken down into many aspects, but we now spend about 1.2 and rising as we see it to about $1.3 billion just on accommodation supplement. So that is about 40% of that goes to those that are on benefits, but actually a lot more goes for those that are on lower incomes, and it's a way that we support people who are struggling in some areas and can't afford to pay their rent and their mortgages. Actually, if you take the overall spend and include IRR, this government over the next year will spend around $1.9 billion on accommodation supplement and income-related rents for those that are, as I say, are in the lower incomes or on benefits, which they do seem to come hand in hand. We're investing another $188.6 million in welfare reform. And I would like to go into that in a bit more detail than perhaps we've had in the past. But I'm going to come back to it because I want to stick to some of the stuff that we have announced but gets overlooked pretty quickly. Confidential listening service, which is the funding that goes, we actually get the DIA, Department of Internal Affairs, to administer it, but is really important for those that have suffered historical abuse. So it was actually started under the Labor government in 2008, and we have stuck with it and now extended that funding for another 2 years. But that is for those people who, quite frankly, have the most horrific stories that I've certainly ever heard. And you can see that path that they've been on. What the confidential listening service does is give them a place to express that, and actually is a really important part of their healing. And for many, they will tell you it's the first time they've been listened to, believed, and actually felt that they've had the state listening, which is the way that it happens. They're also able to wrap support around them. In line with that, we've also put substantial money into addressing historical grievances, about $16 million additional from memory, which I'll find as I'm talking. But that $16 million goes a long way to addressing historical abuse claims. So what we've done is, the truth of the matter is, so that when they go to court, the state actually wins because it's too hard for them to prove that all those years ago that the abuse took place, and too hard to prove how much of it is from the previous hurt that led to them being in care and how much of the horrific abuse that some suffered while in care. What we have done is certainly on the leadership of myself and under the Attorney-General, we have said that wherever possible we would like to err on the side of paying people out. So if it is a certain point in time and they were in certain institutions and we have evidence that there was other abuse and neglect there, then we would like to see these people be able to move on with their lives and wherever we can actually pay it out. From memory, we have about 1,000 claims. We've settled about 265, and we have another whole lot that are still in train and still working their way through. Hence, we need to put more money in and need to see those people have what I think is quite minimal closure, to be honest, and it in some respects feels quite trivial, but it makes a big difference to them in their lives. The other thing we've done is we've we've continued funding of $5.6 million for family violence response coordination. We've also put more into budgeting advice services, and that is temporary. So we already put in about $9 million a year. That's more than double the funding over the last 4 years, but we see that they need some help in the interim, but that needs a complete review. So we need to look at the current policy. Is it working? Are we getting unintended consequences consequences or the consequences that we intended, and if so, how is that affecting them, and how do we need to look at a more sustainable funding options for them going forward. The other initiatives, of course, there is what we've already heard today, which is food in schools, which is really positive. To see all it being accessible to all decile 1 to 4 schools for 5 days a week, wheat bix and milk, which will make a big difference, I think. A lot has been said today about whose fault is it and why are these kids hungry, and I can sort of stand here and pontificate for a long time on what the causes might be and why that is, but at the end of the day, any member stands in a classroom and sees hungry kids that are fidgeting, unable to learn, unable to get that kind of support to get that little brain switched on, then it makes sense that we're stepping up and expanding a program that is already there. Mr Speaker, we've also talked about Kids Can. I think it's important that we're more than tripling their funding actually. We give $150,000 now. We're actually going to $500,000 a year over the next 3 years. That funding goes towards those other items. One that I thought was really important as a mum myself is around lice treatment. That can be really hard to get rid of at times and be very expensive to purchase those treatments and keep up with them. So seeing that treatment come through from Kids Can and them able to step in and do those sorts of services, I think makes a big difference. The other is I want to touch on microfinance and whiteware, and there was a bit of derogatory from the opposition when we said that we were going to look at a procurement model for whiteware, where the truth of the matter is we spend nearly $11 million a year in giving special need grants to those on benefits. They actually pay it back, so it's a loan. Effectively what is happening far, far too often for my liking and for those that work with these people is they buy poor quality second-hand goods with no warranties or guarantees. They then break down, they haven't got the money to fix them, they go and borrow another one, they're still paying off the one that they bought originally, and it just seems to be a really hard cycle for them. What we've discovered is the average price that they are paying is around $420 for, as I say, predominantly second-hand goods. I reckon we can get them a new machine at that kind of price with a warranty of 2 years. That is actually installed in their home, takes the old machine away and sees them actually have a much better service and much better see them not having to re-borrow again and again and again. And I just think it makes sense. We've seen substantial changes in alarms in previous years where I changed the procurement model for that, and I think it'll make a difference. Microfinance is something that I personally am particularly interested in. I think life is tough on a benefit, but actually people can do it. And that's evident by the fact that 50% of those on welfare actually don't go for special need grants, don't go for additional payments. But when something goes wrong, it is hard to manage. And we far too often see people borrowing from loan sharks and from others, getting themselves into financial difficulty and unable to pay back. Mr Speaker, the kind of questions, though, that we need to go through over the next few months, and we want to do that in partnership with the community, in partnership with banks and others, is what sort of lending do we want to do? So are we the lender of first choice or the lender of last choice? Are we looking at consolidating people's loans from loan sharks, or should we not be doing that because it almost incentivises? Are they low interest or are they no interest? Are we taking on the loan sharks at some respects in their own business and saying that actually come and lend from this kind of microfinance service or not? And those are what we are going to work our way through as we go through it. Mr Speaker, I want to talk about work and income and the changes that are happening there. So $188.6 million new going into work and income. And one that hasn't been talked about much is $16.4 million of that is actually a work bonus. So that is for sole parent support or people on the new supported living payment who go off benefit and don't have work expectations so that they can retain some of their benefit over time. It is a huge transition going from benefit to work, and often the pay cycles don't all add up nicely. So what we're saying is that your benefit will decrease by $100 a week, even though you started in a job, so that you can actually have a little bit of time to manage and get yourself into that new world. And that's costing us $16.4 million we project, but I think it's a good investment. What we're also doing is 354 new staff within work work and income. And I heard New Zealand First today saying how shocking that was and how awful it is, and if unemployment benefits going down, then why do we need them? For the very reason, actually, that sole parent support and those on the current invalids benefit, but the new supported living, is not going down at the same levels. They need intensive support that works alongside of them. We need to bring caseloads down, and to do that we need to be putting more staff on the front line. 40 of those staff will be going into the contact centre, 100 will be in administration roles that are actually taking away a lot of that work from the front line, and the others, of course, about 214 of them, will be on the front line and making a big difference. We're also putting money into making sure that we've got money for drug testing so that we can help out with the costs there. Mr Speaker, this is a big package. I could speak far more longer than 10 minutes on this, as it's so significant, but this is making a real difference for people on the ground, and I'm really proud to deliver it.
Well done.
I call the Honourable Member Philip Twyford.